Morning, Jeffro.
Good morning. I can see
Hey,
people filter in already. Hello.
no breaks between meetings Tuesday, so therefore I have my camera off so that you don't have to suffer through watching me eat.
I think I speak for all of us when I say thank you.
Happy to help.
Mic check, mic check.
Mike's not here, man.
Funny, your video is frozen for me. I don't know if that's...
No, Chrome is in the process of crashing for me, so I'm going to restart and then come back. So please, vamp until I return.
so big and complicated these days that they can be in the process of crashing. Someone else say something just to verify that my audio is still working.
Yeah, your audio is good.
Oh, I can hear
I can talk or I can chew and you can listen to me eat this sandwich. Well, that,
I'll admit, 2 straight minutes of silence when you were on the call, Clark, did get me a little worried.
damn, man.
And I can't stay quiet that long, you know that.
I've been slammed.
You're a kindred spirit. Jeffro is still working on it. He may or may not have blamed our favorite upstream Linux distribution. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Second favorite.
Second favorite.
All right. I'm going to not do what I just did. I've been trying to close things, but yeah. I'm being defeated by the internet today. Good morning, everyone. We have a much smaller crowd than normal today. I know that there were several folks that I talked to who said that they would be here. So we will give them another moment or so before we really dive in. In the meantime, I will try to sort out which tab is defeating me. Basically closing things at random now.
not even sure I want to ask what you're. Get all these weird flashes on blankness, and then there's a blurry thing, and then there's you again.
This is on my video feed?
Huh?
No.
Well,
It's on your side, I think, Clark. I mean, it looks good on my side.
is it okay? All right.
And your audio is breaking too, Clark.
My audio is breaking up.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Huh. Go tell my wife to get off her VPN connection and screwing up hogging the bandwidth. I don't think that will go real well for me, but
All right. Do I have a slide deck up, or am I just like showing?
I can see
showing my email to everybody. Okay, that's good. It wouldn't be the first time.
I like the way you keep putting acting chair up there, Jeffro.
Oh, it's not a permanent job.
You just keep thinking that.
Jeffro, I don't know if I mentioned in the context of the SIG meeting that my favorite reference to the idea of accidentally sharing something is an Onion article from 20 years ago, which is entitled "Local Man Not Ready to Share His Billy Joel Fan Page with Coworkers Just Yet." That's not what I'm seeing. I see the automotive SIG slide, so it looks good.
Okay. Well, being a fan of Billy Joel is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to celebrate.
Struck a nerve.
Not intentionally, I'm sure. All right, I've got 9:06 a.m. where I'm sitting. I guess it's 12:06 East Coast, and it's probably getting late in Europe for anybody who's on from Europe. So let's go ahead and dive in. We've only got 8 people, which is odd, and I'm wondering if it's because of the meeting change, but we can cover that. We can burn that bridge when we come to it. So for an agenda, I've got an introduction, which I think we probably have already accomplished. Is there anybody on the call who has not been here before? I think I recognize everybody's names pretty much. If not, I'll just give a quick introduction. I'm Jeffro. I'm community architect at Red Hat. I have somehow been elected to be the acting chair of this group. I'm actually very happy to be here because I think the automotive SIG is going to be a real boon for a lot of people in the automotive industry. It has certainly gotten a lot of interest from around the industry, and I think it's going to be a great collaboration point for all things distro-based and automotive. So with that, let's dive into the agenda. We've got some actions from the previous meeting. We've got some status on the goals. I created a goals slide a while back for the remaining 2021. And as 2021 is rapidly diminishing, I think it's time to go over those goals and just to see where we're at and what still needs to be done. The future meeting schedule. Clearly, the current meeting schedule that I have. Okay, thank you, Ian. Maybe I'll make sure to enter that in the notes for this meeting. The Onion article. The future meeting schedule, or the current meeting schedule as of today, we moved it from Thursday to Tuesday, and it looks like we went from about 35 participants to 8. So I'm going to maybe call that a fail, and we'll bring it up on the mailing list and probably post another doodle poll to find out what would be a good time for us all to meet. Because this is clearly not an improvement on what we had previously. We'll have a quick technical status update. Pierre is not able to be here, but it looks like Rachel is here and Clark is here, and I have some notes from Pierre, so we can go over that. That'll probably be the meeting. We still have some requests for help, specifically for developing contribution guidelines, which we have not yet accomplished. Partly because we've been focused on actually getting a repo up that people could contribute to if they wanted to. And now that we actually have that repo in place, it'd be great for us to get some contribution guidelines before the end of the year. So moving on, the actions that we had from the last meeting were to continue the work on developing infrastructure. We'll have some discussion on that in a few slides. I think that's gone quite well. We currently have a GitLab presence. There it is. I don't know if that's finally loading for everybody else, as it just did for me. And we've got some good documentation, which is also great. And these are not; those are actually the same page. There is actually documentation here at sig.centos.org. Let me just make sure that I'm correctly. Which also contains information on how to build, which is what everybody has been really interested in. Finding a better times to meet, I've got a separate slide on that, and then encourage all interested parties to join this community. I know that I have been doing a certain amount of work in that regard. I think that it's great that I keep hearing back from people that they have heard about the CentOS Automotive SIG, which is awesome. Without letting people know about it, they won't know it's here. So I think we should continue that effort. Specific goals through the end of the year. Our primary goal was to build a foundational community, and I'm hoping that the meeting schedule hasn't thrown a complete wrench into that. But establishing working relationships among all participants, I think we've had some really interesting discussions so far. This is our 4th formal meeting, I believe, and we've also had 2 office hours sessions, and there have been some really great discussions there in those meetings. And we've been, as I said a second ago, we've been reaching out to a lot of different organizations within the industry, in the automotive industry, to come and join us. We still need to develop contribution guidelines, just as we need to develop and continue to develop plans for a CentOS automotive variant. We do currently have a code base and a manifest. We have a build plan. Build and test infrastructure, I think, is still ongoing. And so we don't have a schedule right now for publishing a CentOS automotive variant, or when we're going to be publishing that in the context of CentOS Stream. But I would like for us to do that as soon as we possibly can. I think a lot of people are waiting to get hands on an actual distribution as well as code. And presentation at Automotive Linux Summit. I will discuss that in a few minutes, I think. Well, maybe I won't. I can discuss it now. So the Automotive Linux Summit is a big event for automotive Linux, obviously. It happens every year in Japan in December, usually co-located with Open Source Summit Japan. It's a Linux Foundation event. And the CentOS, there were several presentations submitted. The ones that seemed popular were those related to functional safety. So I know that Gabrielle from Red Hat will be presenting on functional safety, on Red Hat's plan or strategy for achieving functional safety certification through ASIL-B. That will be on December 15th. The times are all in Japan time zone. It's at 3:45 in the afternoon, Japan time. It's going to be terrible for the East Coast and probably terrible, not totally terrible for Europe. It'll be somewhat early in the morning for Europe. But we're also going to be having doing a BOF, a functional safety BOF directly after that. It'll be at 4:45 p.m. Japan time. It'll be about midnight here on the west coast of North America, and I think it'll be 3 o'clock in the morning for those on the East Coast, so I don't expect to see a whole lot of you there. But hopefully it'll be a really vibrant discussion about functional safety with our community members in Asia. And sadly, I have not managed to develop stickers yet. That is, I know, one thing that people have asked about surprisingly often. So we're going to continue to work towards that. Possibly in incorporating the CentOS brand. I need to talk with Rich about what the trademark guidelines are for that to make sure that we don't upset anybody along the way. The future meeting schedule. As I said a second ago, I think that the meeting schedule change was kind of a bust. The idea was to continue to have 2 meetings per month, this formal meeting plus an informal office hours, each 2 weeks apart. The time on Thursday was not working for a number of people who wanted to join, particularly from some major automakers. And so we wanted to kind of switch it around a little bit. We did a poll, picked the time that most people responded to. However, the poll did not show a clear path. There was, I mean, of the 26 respondents, I believe, 13 said that this meeting time was good. Clearly, that was not not completely accurate because we don't have 13 people here today. So we're going to be doing some different experimentation with that. The other aspect of this is that each meeting day will have 2 meetings. We have this meeting today scheduled at a relatively friendly time for the EU and for the Eastern US. And there is another meeting scheduled this afternoon in about 7 hours. That will be at a more Asia-friendly time, and it'll be in the evening US. I will be there, hopefully not by myself. And to subscribe to future meeting schedules, please contact me if you don't have a calendar invite to this meeting so that we can make sure that everybody has the right invitation. And as I said, we'll continue to experiment on that. So the actual meat of this meeting is technical status updates. We do have code now, as we showed a second ago. We have documentation. Really thanks to the technical folks, Rachel and Pierre and Clark and Ian and everybody else who has contributed to these things. Pierre says that the CI pipeline is work in progress and progressing. Rachel, do you have any updates on that or anything that we should bring up at this meeting?
Yeah, most of the work right now is migrating the pipeline from CentOS Stream 8 to CentOS Stream 9 bits, so work is ongoing for that. There's also a lot of tests that were added, but they're not yet running in the pipeline that QE has contributed, so we want to be able to tag those as tier 1 and be able to enable them in the pipeline that will be run on the built images. But other than that, yeah, a lot of the bulk work is moving to CentOS Stream 9.
Okay. Clark, do you have anything to add, possibly on kernel? Do we have any new information?
All of our stuff is actually happening today.
Okay.
I talked to Pierre while I was multitasking in one of our other meetings after I'd been reminded I had an action item. And I gave him an SRPM of a kernel auto up on the CentOS Stream 9 namespace in GitLab. Yeah. No, it's not on automotive. We actually created a mirror from the stuff out of the CentOS Stream 9 namespace into the automotive namespace, just kind of as a stopgap for right now. We'll figure out where we want to maintain this kernel tree.
Okay.
But it's kernel-auto is the name of it. It is a descendant of the real-time tree. So it has the real-time patch set applied. Right now it has mostly the real-time configs from Rail for real-time. We're going to start refining that where we turn off things like InfiniBand and Fiber Channel and all those things that we don't care about in the automotive space, and turn on a number of things that aren't normally turned on in Rail, which are voltage regulators, clock generators, little things like that.
Okay.
So it's a work in progress. I mean, I wouldn't pick it up and drop it into an ECU right now, but we're getting there. Probably going to try and use the Raspberry Pi 4 as our demo platform, just because it's ubiquitous and, I mean, no one's going to use an RPI 4 as an ECU controller, but it's something to work with, and it's close to what we'll be using platform. So.
And it is something that a lot of people already have on their desk.
Right.
Which is, I know that we have discussed a lot of other different hardware platforms. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. We have discussed a lot of other hardware platforms, and the Raspberry Pi 4 seems to be the one that keeps coming back up.
I would welcome an effort once we get this thing nailed down a little bit. I'd welcome an effort to try and extend it to some of the others. I mean, an obvious candidate, although they're not very available right now, NVIDIA Jetsons.
Yeah.
And there are others around. I've got a little board here that is just dying for me to do something with it, called a Tinker Edge R, made by Asus. I don't think it's as capable. I think it's probably in the same category as the Raspberry Pi 4, but it may have a little bit more of an edge in terms of doing AI, which is a big thing for us.
Mm-hmm. Mr.
But anyway, that's so. I guess the short answer, which was none of the above, that was all very rambling and long. The short answer is we have something in place right now.
And it's exciting to see. And I want just to add something to that is I'm hoping that we will develop a workflow around that kernel and possibly other packages that evolve, that enter into this over time, that models what CentOS Stream more broadly does. That we'd like this to be a place where we can show development, but also receive input. So. And why not start with the kernel? My goodness.
Do we need anything else?
Yeah.
Is there other stuff that we need to put in besides the kernel?
Clark, you bring this up so often. I'll just put a bogey out there. If you can display the camera without having to start a process, then I don't know. I mean, that would back up this bluster of what do you need more than the kernel with something real. So I'll just toss that out there.
I have the ability to create a kernel thread, so entirely possible that I could get close. But unfortunately, I don't have the time to do it right now, Ian. So, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I have possibly a silly question, which is, I know that one of the goals is to create a 2-second boot time or less in order to go from cold to running a rear camera, because that's been the requirement that people have been working towards. It seems like there are, and I know I'm not the only person who has thought this, but it seems like there are other strategies for that besides having to boot the entire system and start up a thread for a camera, as opposed to letting the camera be. I mean, I know that my son has a first-person view camera for a remote control aircraft that literally has maybe a 200 millisecond boot time. It just, you turn it on and suddenly you've got access to it remotely.
I've tried and failed to retire the use of the term boot time to refer to this, because what we really mean is critical service prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
The camera is just one of them. So yeah, that's absolutely true. We don't mean that the whole system has to be available, but we do need to start. And really, this is the only other one that has come up in broad conversations is things like the earlier telematics can be available, the better. Yeah, and it can be a staged thing. We know that that's often that's the approach that's been taken in the industry right now for the camera in particular. I know that I think I'm not revealing anything since this is my own observed behavior in a vehicle that I owned, but that our Chevy Volt would display the rear view camera when you turned it on, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually the full infotainment. But anyway, I didn't want to dive in. I mean, on the one hand, this is a great requirement because it is so crystal clear. But on the other hand, it's just one of many.
Mm-hmm.
I'll state that a lot of the things that display cameras early on are really implemented in firmware.
That's what I was wondering, is it possible to just get the camera up and running and then take it over with the main OS once it's booted?
that is a strategy.
And an approach.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way to work at it.
We're still interested in just how quick can
That doesn't necessarily.
One of the reasons that we don't just immediately
currently looking to renegotiate the definition of the second part of that.
Well, the one of the reasons that we're looking at the worst case. Obviously, if we can do suspender RAM and things like that, we can wake up blazingly fast and do all that. The problem is that you're on a fixed budget with that 12-volt lead acid battery,
Mm-hmm.
and if you do suspender RAM, you are still trickling current away from it. And if you suspend a RAM for 2 weeks or a month or whatever, and then you come up expecting to be able to start your car,
Yeah.
you can have problems. So there's a limit there based on how much is in the battery pack that you have as to how long we can stay suspended. And then at that point, you have to say, oh, screw it, we'll just power off. And then, at that point, you have to be able to display the camera from power on in 2 seconds.
Right.
That's why we're focusing on the from boot.
The
Government doesn't care that we manage to do it properly. 99.9% of the times they care about that 0.1%.
Sure. Oh,
Good job with the kernel. Looking forward to seeing those builds. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other technical status to bring in? Anything that I might have missed? Okay. As far as calls to action go, I still need help contributing or creating these contribution guidelines. So as soon as anybody has some spare cycles, that would be great. I'd love to do that before the end of the year, or at least get started on it. We do need to develop some porting and BSP pages in the wiki. This was brought up at the last meeting. And that was the place where we were talking about bringing in some hardware ideas. I think that the Jetson is a great one. I think there's a number of others that we could probably target as well.
I'd love to kill the usage of the term BSP. Just because if I get my way, we're not going to create a custom kernel per board. I have one architectural kernel, and then the device tree or the ACPI tables will tell us how that that thing should be booted. Just taking my cue from.
No, and I think that actually defines one of the big differences between a distro-based operating system versus a build-it from source operating system in which everything would be customized.
Yeah, and it makes it so we can support it for long periods of time, as opposed to if as you go along and you've got a 10, 15, 20-year life cycle for a execution environment, you have to have somebody to back it. And as you gain platforms, that means you have to have more somebodies, and it doesn't scale. So if we can get this to the point where we keep one architectural kernel, then reduce the amount of people that have to be focused on one particular platform, cover multiple.
That has always been a big challenge in the ARM world. I think that it is something that we have been working on, or we as in Red Hat, and it's something I think that we as in the CentOS SIG will continue to work on in the context of automotive.
Well, a bunch of us at Red Hat have come from the traditional embedded world, and back in the 2000s, like 2005, 2006, whatever, it was not hard to pick out the Wind River engineers in a crowd because they were the ones missing patches of hair after having pulled them out, trying to support all those board support packages.
Oh yes.
They used to call it the matrix of pain. So we really don't want to go down that path.
No, no, I mean, that was one of the reasons why Linaro came into existence, was to help
Yeah.
solve that particular problem. I was actually at Monte Vista in the latter part of that decade, and I remember it very well. We had a board
Yep.
farm that took up as much space as our cube farm.
Oh, and every time you added an arch, it just got worse.
Yeah.
Because back in those days, it was SH and gosh, there were half a dozen PowerPC, obviously, all the
Mm-hmm.
variants of ARM.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of nightmarish.
Yep. I remember very well. And actually that actually leads to our next call to action that's been up, which is the idea of a board farm with remote access. That's something that we discussed previously, and I don't know if we've gotten any farther with it.
Well, one question I have is, what type of development would we expect to be able to use? Because it's pretty straightforward to put boards in a board farm just to be able to boot kernels and do
Mm-hmm.
non-graphical things. You can do networking things. You could do telematics things.
Right.
But once you start bringing in the idea of having to deal with network, shipping around graphic frames and camera and doing a graphics display, that makes it much harder.
Yeah, it's really hard to
I'm
do
not sure
that
we have a good.
remotely.
I don't know that we have a good solution to that. I would be really interested in hearing how we might be able to do remote displays or
Mm-hmm. One
you know.
other idea that I know that this idea keeps coming up over and over again in all the various communities that I've been involved with. One innovative idea that I heard one time was that rather than having a board farm, what if there was a library where we would put together distinct kits that would have maybe it might have a development board and a screen and whatever networking hardware was required, and basically put those in a box, and people could check them out, and they would whoever was running the thing would literally just mail it to them for a specified amount of time. There's a lot of human logistics in there that make it kind of challenging. If people don't get it back in time, how do you send it on to the next person, etc. But
Yeah, it might be a problem after I spilled a Pepsi into
and
you know.
replacing hardware that goes bad or for one reason or another, I think that there's a lot of different things that could go wrong with it. But you can also buy a whole lot of boards and mail them around a lot for the same cost or less as actually creating a board farm that is useful. And the result would be much more usable if it was putting boards in people's hands. The
Yeah,
other
that's
idea is to create a budget for it so that we can actually contribute money to people. Basically, buy one and send it to somebody. I don't think we're quite at that point with the CentOS SIG yet. We have any very rich relatives who are willing to put in a whole bunch of money to send boards out to random people, but we may get there at some
well,
point.
one of the problems with automotive devel boards is just sheer cost,
Yeah,
because those things are not cheap.
and that's why I think focusing on things like the Raspberry Pi. I'd love to see some other ARM hardware in there besides the Raspberry Pi as well.
Me
Maybe
too.
something that's a little bit more supported than the Broadcom chips. I'm thinking maybe like the Beagle boards are a good idea.
I wondered about those. I haven't fiddled with a Beagle board in a couple of years, actually,
Yeah.
so I don't know where they are.
I believe the BeagleBone Black actually does have a CAN bus. I don't think it has any hardware attached to it, but it does actually have CAN bus support. I don't know if that's we haven't even talked about whether the CAN bus is a requirement for this or if it's, I would assume that it is. But I'm not sure that the Raspberry Pi 4 has that.
I know that a lot of manufacturers are looking at Ethernet as a replacement for CAN,
Mm-hmm.
probably because of its raw throughput.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't
Much
see
more
CAN
developed.
going away anytime soon.
No,
I think most
certainly.
of them are hung off of an I2C or PHY
Mm-hmm.
interface, so that kind of limits the bandwidth as well. But they're so useful. You know, it may be a while before CAN sunsets.
Yeah. So if you narrow down the number of development boards with CAN support, that's an immediate limiting factor. I believe that the Snapdragon, the Qualcomm Snapdragon, there was one that Lenaro was working with. I think it was the Dragon Board 410C. I believe has CAN bus support. And I know they were giving those away at conferences for a number of years. I know I've got one or two of them. So that might be another option. Love to see some NXP hardware and maybe even Renaissance hardware involved as well. But again, that I don't want to take away from the fact that we're not developing for each one of those boards. As Buck said, we are developing for one ARM 64-bit architecture and making sure that it runs on each one of those different boards, and then using those boards and their capabilities, however is best. So you're right. Maybe a board farm isn't what we need. Maybe we need some other method for getting resources into people's hands. Good things to discuss. And we are actually at the open discussion portion of the meeting. And I don't want to keep people unnecessarily. I know that we all have stuff to do, and we are down to 7 people on the call at this point. So does anybody have anything else they want to bring up? I mean, we are just kind of discussing things that are coming up. I've not been keeping up with the chat.
Jeffrey, my name is Joe. This is my first meeting. I am from Wipro. I'm just getting used to the way this is conducted. So just give me a few days to cope up with the pace.
Sure, welcome. Yeah, and if you and your compatriots,
a few more colleagues of mine, I will ask them to join as well from our teams.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
And I'd be happy to get with you offline as well, and give you some guidelines and just an overview of the SIG and what we hope to accomplish here.
Sure.
Actually, I actually do have some slides to that. These are just left over from previous calls, but I don't know if you were here earlier, but as I said, this is only our 4th formal call for this SIG.
No problems.
So it's really just starting out. We're just in the process of getting the infrastructure working and up to speed. There are links in the slides that I'll send around afterwards.
Okay.
You can see there is a code base here.
Yeah.
This is actually mostly a list of manifests and a build. It's more of a build system than a code base.
Okay.
And there's documentation on how to do that right here.
Yeah, I'll just go through it, and then if I have any clarifications, I'll write to you just to get the initial hiccup done.
Okay, good.
I'm based in Bangalore in India.
Okay. Oh, so is it late for you?
Yeah, it's about 11 for us. Yeah, 11.
Okay.
It's fine.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you aboard.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and wishing you all the same. Yeah.
Okay. We've kind of reached the end of our agenda. I'm showing some of the older slides now. Does anybody have anything else they would like to bring up, or should we give you 21 minutes back on your day?
The only thing I'd say, Jeffro, is let's have a call for people to do a little research on affordable ARM-based platforms along the lines of Raspberry Pi 4 or a BeagleBone Black. And just say, well, what else does everybody see of that? I've got a couple of weird little boards here that I'm not sure are suitable, but I'll drop them in somewhere if you give me a place to do it.
Yeah.
And it would just be nice to hear other people's take on what they'd like to see supported. Now, I don't want to just have it be driven by NXP, Qualcomm, and TI and half dozen, not even a half dozen, like 2 or 3 others, to say this is what we want. Well, sure, okay, we'll work on that, but every one of those devel boards is going to be multi-$1,000s. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to be able to afford that. So I'd like to see the SIG at least come up with some, some alternatives that we can support, as long as it's not, a multi-month effort to port Linux to this bizarre platform. But if it's a matter of a little bit of work, we can probably squeeze it in.
I have run across very few development boards that would even be within the universe that we're talking about that don't already have Linux support.
Well, yeah.
I mean, so I think that you're right. For most of these, the porting process would actually be fairly easy, and it would be good to have a specific call about it. We can dedicate one of our office hours calls to that, or we can just
Might
bring
be
it up.
worth doing. Just
So
say,
yeah.
let's get everybody that's interested in expanding the universe of supported boards in our automotive SIG. I'm thinking like Al Stone might want to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I was going to announce the time for the next office hours, which will be in roughly 2 weeks. But I know that, as we covered earlier in the call, this meeting time doesn't quite work for a whole lot of people. So we'll continue to iterate on meeting times, and this is going to be a great discussion point, I think. Certainly, once you get people started talking about hardware, it ends up usually being a very vibrant conversation. I'd love to. I mean, eventually we can also branch out to other architectures. Right now, we're very focused on ARM64. I know that. I know from personal experience that there are automotive discussions going on within the RISC-V community as well. I'd love to see.
I wasn't even going to bring that up, but now that you mentioned
I always bring that up.
True.
So I think that getting hands-on hardware is even harder for that particular community. But there's a lot of hardware out there, and narrowing down what hardware is available and what we should focus on is a primary activity, and is one of the central parts of this SIG. So yeah, let's do that. We could also start the discussion as well on the mailing list. Clark, if you want to send out a note to the mailing list just to say we're getting this discussion going, we'll be meeting in person in a couple weeks.
I can do
Give
that.
people some time to think about it.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Do we want to limit it to ARM, or do we want to just throw it open?
We could throw it open. I think we should really focus the discussion on ARM because that's what that's really been the charter that we've been aiming for. If we go look at the manifest right now,
I'd say it's true, but that's only true because that's the way the market is going right now. And in the next 2 or 3 years, I would not be very surprised to see a pretty capable RISC-V platform showing its face. So I don't want to rule anything out.
I wouldn't rule anything out, no. Totally agreed. So, okay, cool. Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up or share or talk about? Otherwise, we will continue on. All right. Well, I'm going to maybe call the meeting, and we will reconvene in a couple of weeks at office hours, and hopefully have some good discussions about hardware.
Sounds good.
Thank you all for coming. Very much appreciated. We'll have the meeting notes and recording going up in a little bit.
When you have a slot for that office hours, shoot me an email, will you? And that will trigger my email to the list, because I'll put that in there and say, we're going to talk this place, this time.
There should be there is actually a slot already set up. It should be on your calendar. If not, then I'll just double check to see if it's on your calendar. And for anybody else who isn't on the meeting invite, let me know if you would like to be on the meeting. It's November 30th or December 1st. I can't remember. All right. Everybody take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye, all of you.